please. A live check.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Performance Scrutiny Committee people. I'm your chairman for today, Councillor William J. Rempley, and I have to read this legal part of the documentation out. This scrutiny committee has been conducted on a hybrid basis according to the Local Government and Election Act Wales 2021. We will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply to all towns, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. I remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the millions of public, and can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and that they use the facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please not speak until I invite you. So much power to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch on your camera so we can see and hear you. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translations of the proceedings can be provided upon request. These images and sound recordings may also be used for training within the council. Yay. Recordings, yes, our three cabinet members. Before we move on, we're going to let them take their chairs and then we're going to on. Okay, apologies for absence.
We've got two apologies here. One from Councillor Brown and one from Councillor Davis.
Declaration of interest. Fine. And it's in the previous meeting on pages 3 to 6. Have a mover, a seconder. Thank you. And we go straight into page 7, which is the recruitment intention report. And who's going to take it through that, Sally?
I am. So I'm not going to, if it's okay, Chair, I'm not going to take you through page by page, as I'm going to make exceptions that you have an opportunity to read the papers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just to give you a brief introduction, every time we come to scrutiny, whatever we report to you, recruitment and retention comes up as a challenge for children's services, adult services and prevention and inclusion. And as a result, members had asked us specifically to put together a report for yourselves to update in terms of the information with respect to recruitment and retention. So that's why we're here. A similar report has previously gone to corporate and place in relation to the overall council recruitment and retention position, but this report is absolutely focused on social services, prevention and inclusion. A couple of things. I'd like to thank colleagues in HR workforce. So Pip Green has done a lot of the data work for us. She's unable to be with us today, but Luke is very ably going to step in. So if there are particular issues over the data, we've got those. And what you've got before you is you've got a narrative report, which gives you the story, if you like, and then you've got the data, which gives you children's, adults, P&I, and then the overall data in terms of the information that we're able to share with you, what we collect and what we can then share in terms of what our workforce looks like. I think one of the main things I would stress from the very beginning is that while there are real challenges in this arena, the amount of control that we have over them are limited in terms of the differences between the local, regional and national position. This isn't a Newport issue. Recruitment in social care, wherever it is not an issue that is particular to Newport at all. I mean, you will know as well as I do from media coverage that there are significant issues in social care, in every bit of it, realistically, in terms of recruiting the right people to do the jobs with the most vulnerable. So that's the first element, is what we can control locally is limited. We can do our very best, but we are up against a national challenge in relation to this workforce. And the other element I just want to stress before obviously the chair opens up for questions, is really is that we are talking about a workforce who work with the most vulnerable people. So whilst recruiting is hugely important, we do have to get that right. So it's not as simple, let's just go out and get people in and do the job. For we need to ensure that we are able to recruit people who've got those skills, who are able to care, who give people a sense of dignity in who they are. So it's not as simple, we need these posts, let's just go and get them. It just doesn't work like that. So that's me, that's my introduction. Happy now to take any questions, Chair, from members.
Okay, well, I know that all members have read this report. They've indicated who they have. And it is a comprehensive report, and I thank you and the team for producing it. At this stage, I'm going to open it up to members to see if they want to come in on various sides of it. Pat.
Yeah, can I ask? Thanks for the report very much. It's very interesting report and difficult. A difficult report. Can I ask you to quantify the number of vacant posts, perhaps in terms of percentage of the social services workforce, and then maybe okay.
Yes, no, that's fine. So what we did is, in terms of the data that we provided at the back of the report in the appendices, there's data for the overall position in terms of social services P&I, and then we break it down into each of the areas to look at the differences between the three. So one of the things I'd stress is this changes day by day. So the figures that we give you today will change tomorrow, will change the next day, because obviously people come and they go. So just to give you sort of an overall, the head count that we currently have is 1,151 people in social services, and of those 907 are full-time posts. And the turnover that we have is about 11.73%. I think that's right. Yeah. So that's the turnover that we have in any given year. Now I'm going to run my eye down to look at the number of vacancies that we have at the moment. Look. So what we don't have in this report is the number of vacancies today.
No, but I can find.
We can get that for you. But at any one time, we are running somewhere in the region of between 100 and 200 vacancies across the board is what we're looking at. But that's not because it's because we're recruiting all the time. We're recruiting constantly. We are recruiting all the time. And if you look at the figures, you'll see that the number of posts we recruited for was over 1,000 last year, and that's just because of the way that the churn works in terms of recruitment.
I'm sure you will agree that that's a concerning situation.
Yeah.
And could you express some qualitative judgment on the effect that the vacancies are having on the service?
So one of the things that I mentioned in the report is that it's not universal. So it's not across the whole of the service that we see vacancies and we see churn. In some areas of the service, we have a full workforce and we see workforce that stays. A couple of examples of that: Flying Start. We have in Flying Start a really stable, long-term workforce. Whenever you go to visit a Flying Start provision and you start to talk to people about how long they've been there, 10, 15 years, and are consistent, and they're able to retain those staff. Our fostering team in children's services has been a really stable, consistent team over a number of years. Very rarely get vacancies, and when we do, we fill them quickly. The challenge that we have is in specific areas. Residential care in children and in adults. Both of those areas are real issues for us. And the qualitative impact of those is particular because we have to operate 24/7. We cannot be in a position where we do not have people in those posts. So in both children's residential care and adults residential care, when we have a vacancy, when we have a sickness, when we have a maternity leave, we have to cover it. And hence why we end up using agency in those two arenas. Our agency use is concentrated in residential care. We try our very best not to, but it is concentrated there because we do not have a choice. We cannot leave those arenas without staffing for 5 minutes, never mind 5 days. And then the other areas that we see a concentration of a real challenge in terms of recruitment are, I suppose, what you would call the high-end areas of work. So in children's services, it's the front door, the child protection team. In adult services, it's the front door, it's the managed care teams. And in prevention and inclusion, we particularly see challenges within the youth service. So what you see is a mixed picture. Impact qualitatively in those areas is not to do with the fact that we don't do the work, because again, that isn't an option in terms of managing what we have to manage with the front door. What happens is the pressure on other staff goes up and up and up. That is a real challenge in all of those areas. The front doors, the longer term teams and the youth service is what you see as a pressure on other staff. And I think I would also say qualitatively, when we do have a constant movement of staff in those teams, it's more challenging to get staff with the knowledge, experience and skills that we need. That's one of the issues, and then to retain them. And that inevitably puts pressure on the whole structure in terms of how we're able to manage referrals that come into us, and then how we're able to provide consistent services for residents. So sorry, big answer to that, Councillor Druitt. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Come on to
Chair, can I add something else? I mean, I think that there's implicit in relying on agency staff, there are dangers.
Yes.
I think there's dangers to the service. And I just wonder what alternatives might be tried.
So obviously you've got a foundation of wishing to ensure that we have a permanent workforce. That's where we start from, is ensuring that we have enough staff within those areas. We don't often employ agency social workers. That's a small group of our agency. Our agency issue, as I say, is in residential care, both children and adults, for the reasons that I've given you. We've done quite a lot of work to try to encourage our own staff, for example, to do extra work if they wish to, where we've got part-time staff to look at how we can change their hours and look at really enhancing our own staff group and ensuring that we can do that. We do have a very sort of quite consistent call out, tends to be on a Friday afternoon, where we need agency staff, for example, to cover an issue in the hospital, when perhaps we've got a child that needs supervision in the hospital. You see emails that go out to the whole of social services asking, is there anybody who'd like to do that piece of work? So we try to look in-house first at how we build up and how we use the resources that we've got in-house first. We've also looked, particularly in children's residential care, at building, in effect, our own bank of staff. So rather than using agency, looking at having a peripatetic workforce, and how do we do that? That brings other challenges in terms of how do we do that when at the same time we really don't want to be employing people on 0-hour contracts. That's not what we want to do. But how do we do that in terms of holding a workforce that we can then use for agency? And that's an area that I think we need to continue to look at. We have been part of some discussions regionally to consider whether or not there would be an appetite to do that on a regional basis. There could be, but it is an area that is still really challenging. In relation to children's social care and agency workers, and this is just for social workers, there's been a very successful national piece of work carried out over the last year, where the Association of Directors of Social Services, all 22 local authorities, came together to look at how we could manage the agency world. And that was because what we were seeing was escalating charging going on. What we now have is an agreement, we have a pledge across all 22 local authorities about how we manage what we pay those agencies. And to date, that has been really successful in keeping the payment down. This is only for social workers, but also at looking at de-incentivising people leaving us and going to work for the agencies. So all 22 local authorities have agreed. We've done the first year of that. We're now looking at a second year. And we have started the discussions for how we could roll that out to adult social care. Residential care is a bigger leap for that area of work. Whether or not we would get to that on the success of the children's social workers could be one way we could look at it. So yeah, it is a real challenge.
And I just once we're on that one thing, obviously there is a substantial reliance on agency work in certain parts.
Yeah, I don't think it's substantial. There is a reliance at certain points and certain times.
11.7 11% or nearly 12% of the annual turnover rate. And it relies on agency staff. Factors contributing to these challenges include competitive labour markets. I don't want you to comment just on that. What I want to get to is you mentioned deterring the allure of agency work, because I see the allure of agency work could exacerbate a reduction in our own training for social care. So I'm interested in what are you doing? That's what I want to get from you.
So firstly, it's not 11% reliance on residential care on agency
No, you have a
staff.
turnover
That's
of
the turn, but we don't.
11.7.
But we don't cover all of that with agency staff, not by a mile. It's not substantial. So we're not covering. We do use agency staff, but not at 11% of our workforce.
Okay.
Nowhere near that. In terms of the allure, so the first thing is that within the children's social care piece of work that was done for social workers nationally, there has been a really clear piece of work done, which is that we now don't use social workers who have left within the last 6 months of neighbouring local authorities. So if the social worker leaves Billy today and goes to an agency, we won't use them through that agency. Now, there are challenges in that in terms of employment, but in terms of disincentivising the drift, that's one thing. Second thing is that we constantly look at our pay scales and look at our pay scales for social workers. I'll use those as the way. And if you look at the regional comparisons, we're a good payer for social workers currently. And we have had discussions about how we continue to ensure that we're able to reward staff appropriately, both in terms of finance, but also in terms of the other elements of the package of terms and conditions that we give to staff. Luke's been involved in extensive work around values, around well-being, about how do we incentivise. Because I don't think we can ever compete with what the agencies can do. But what we can do is say, you can work in a local authority where there is support, there is training, there is good morale, where well-being counts, where you get a good pension, to be honest. It's still a really important incentivisation, and where you have terms and conditions that are vastly different to the agencies, even though the agencies pay more. So that's the way that we try to ensure that we prevent that drift away to the agency.
Can I ask a
Can
question?
I just a second? Can I just establish the fact? I think that refusing to employ people because they've left and gone there, that's going to be taken elsewhere, and that will end up being challenging.
And that's been
whether we are right or wrong. I'm not quite sure. I'll leave that there. I don't know enough about the case that's going. But I have a sympathy with you trying to stop this type of behaviour. Let's just be as strong as that. We've dealt with the allure of my trail of thread, so I'm going to let you come in now.
I mean, just a final comment on that. It would be interesting to find out whether anything's being considered at a national legislation level, you know, so that you're not based sort of making these decisions at national government level and then having challenging court, you know, whether it's worth bringing in the MP to talk about that kind of thing.
I mean, the national piece of work that was done on agencies for children's social care was done with legal advice and had been done very extensively. And as Councillor Routley flagged, obviously that's being dealt with elsewhere. It's been done very much on a position of how do you work with the agencies rather than get into a battle with some of this. So at this stage, I don't think it needs anything else at the moment, because I think that's been dealt with in terms of that piece of work. And I think what everyone agreed is that we will always need agency in some shape or form. It's how we manage that market that was key. I think what that first year of that programme has shown us is it is possible to do. And that if the 22 local authorities come together to do it, we've got a fighting chance of doing it.
Yes.
I think where it unravels is if people are unable for whatever reason. But if we we stick together,
Yeah.
we have a chance of being able to do it.
The other thing is,
Sorry,
and the last, sorry,
my actual question was
Yeah.
on the employee benefits point. How does the maternity pay policy compare with other local governments, or do you all have the same one? Because I know this, we've obviously got quite a high level of female staff, so you know probably an inevitable consequence of that is concerns about maternity. So that to me would be a huge way of.
It's never a concern, it's always a joy.
Yeah.
And
It's comparable. So we are exploring options in terms of family friendly policy in terms of is there alternatives in how we pay maternity leave. So for the occupational maternity, are there avenues we can explore to make that more manageable for staff that are on maternity leave? But it's part of a wider picture in terms of looking at employee experience. So next month April we will be launching our people plan. One of the strands of it is employee experience that we'll be looking at recruitment, retention, the benefit package that we can offer to staff. Our salary for social workers is compared to our neighbours is competitive. You know, we are slightly more.
You're quite constrained with salary, whereas potentially with these alternative incentives, you're a bit more free, aren't you?
Yeah, there's more options, I guess, in terms of how we can explore those. Again, there are limitations. You know, there isn't an endless pot of money that our disposal, so we have to be creative in terms of what we're offering. So as Sally's touched upon, really, in terms of flexible working, offering staff to do a condensed week, other working patterns, having that flexibility. We're in the process of exploring what our employee benefits packages, moving to a new provider potentially, if that's more attractive to staff. Those sort of packages that will make us an employer of choice, that will help drive down recruitment challenges and improve retention, we hope.
we are very proactive in terms of staff returning and being able to return after maternity to a package that works for them. I mean, I can remember even 10 years ago someone saying, well, you can't have part-time team managers in those, and we did. We've managed to do that, and I think my personal view is that if you as a social services directorate providing children's services can't offer good packages in terms of returning to work, really sticky wicket. So we work quite hard to demonstrate that in every post it is possible to do, and that it's possible to offer condensed hours, flexible working, part-time working.
I'm going to bring Councillor Mayan in next.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I don't know who to drop this hand now. Thank you, Sally. My question really is not to do with the report per se, but the overall way that reports are made to scrutiny these days. It seems to me, I don't know whether it was before you joined us, but my scrutiny formed a subgroup that looked at the Children's Social Services Terms and Conditions, and we were so shocked at what was happening that we actually extended that to the whole of social services, and we carried out a very comprehensive scrutiny interview with social workers as well. So that's how things used to happen. Most of the recommendations were ignored, unfortunately, by the then director of social services, but that's another issue. My concern here mostly is that this is a very, I mean, I appreciate the difficulties that you have, and you're only relating things to the problems that you have in your area, but these issues of retention go right across the board, and I think this should be put in the context of what is happening and what is being done to rectify the problems of recruitment across the board. For instance, I noticed that 40%, nearly 40%, were absent through emotional illness. Yeah, and you've given the comparisons there with other authorities in relation to the pay, for instance, but not other things. Are we unique? I doubt if we are, but it's very reassuring. No, that's not the word, is it? It makes us feel like not as bad if we know that we are not the only ones with the same problems. And I know that we do have bigger problems because we're a city, and not like some of the other areas we have. In the past, we used to have comparative data, and this was for authorities comparative authorities and the all Wales data, and we don't seem to get that at scrutiny now. So we can't, you know, it could be that we are the best in Wales, or it could be that we're the worst in Wales, but unless we have that comparative data, we can't really tell.
So, first of all, it's 40% of the sickness, not that 40% of the staff are off with emotionally. Yeah, so that's the first thing. And Councillor Mayor, I mean, I do remember that piece of work. I was here, I was head of Children's Services when that piece of work was undertaken, so I do recall. I think the first thing is that the position in Children's Services is significantly improved from what it was then, which is some 10 years ago, which is really heartening in a way. I think it shows that the overall recruitment and retention, we are in a much better position than we were when that piece of work was undertaken, first in Children's Services and then across social services. We're still not in a position that is perfect or that is absolutely what we would want it to be, but it is significantly better than it was 10 years ago. I would suggest that morale, despite the past 4 years of COVID, cost of living, morale is surprisingly high in social services. Generally, people are very positive about working within Newport as a council and working within our 3 service areas. We get really positive feedback in terms of people wanting to be here. We do struggle because of the demographic in terms of we're on that corridor. We are part of a number of small local authorities. People can go all over the place. It's easy for people to move. If you work in Cumbria, there's not many places you can go to. If you work in Newport, you have within spitting distance 7, 8 local authorities plus the 3rd sector. So there is a geographical issue that impacts us. And there is also a demographic perception of Newport, which is that it is more challenging to work it from a social services perspective because of the range of our population, the diversity and some of the income challenges. I would say actually it's a better place to work for those reasons because it's really interesting. And we do have staff who come to us from other local authorities and go, wow, this is fab. We didn't know this. This is really interesting in terms of working with different people in different ways. I think in terms of the benchmarking and where we fit with other local authorities, we're not the worst. That's the first thing. We're not the best either in terms of comparative sickness, but we're in that kind of ballpark. In Children's Services, sickness this year has been really good. I mean, I'm holding on for dear life as I say this, but we've actually seen a significant reduction in sickness in Children's Services this year compared to the corporate target and compared to where Children's was last year. So that is really encouraging. We do know that in Children's it's generally a younger workforce, which probably impacts on that sickness rate. We see higher maternity, but we see less sickness. In adult services and prevention and inclusion, we are struggling more with sickness and we've got higher rates. But when we compare with the national information, which we can do, it's not any more publicly available like it used to be, Councillor Mayor, but we do get that information. What we see is that we are in that top 3rd. We're not the worst, we're not the best, we're probably average when it comes to how we perform in relation to adult services. In Children's Services, we're performing really well. Prevention and inclusion, we don't have comparative data nationally. So I suppose that, yes, I remember the work. We are in a better place. We do still benchmark, and I look avidly at where we are compared to other local authorities, because I agree with you, understanding whether or not we're unique or whether or not these are challenges is actually really important. And we are certainly not in that bottom quartile at the moment.
I wonder if some of that data can be picked up from the scrutiny reports of other councils.
Possibly in other councils to
If it's there, we're allowed to use it.
We don't get publicly available data. We get something called Social Services Checkpoint, which is not publicly, it's not published.
Yeah.
But
then if you know they have to put in a public document,
then maybe if anybody's providing similar reports, yes, we could. Yeah.
I'll let David ask and then yourself then.
Yeah, I know it doesn't really apply to you, Sally, but it does to a certain extent, but not as much as others. And that's the new way of working, which is mentioned in the report. I think we need more data and comparative data internally as to what has happened with new ways of working, because it seems to me that it's in a vacuum, or it's a secret. We don't know what the hell's going on with the new way of working, how it's impacting on staff, how it's impacting generally on recruitment. But that's, you know, that's, you mentioned it in the report, and it made me think about the fact that this data needs to come to us. We need to be looking at how recruitment, not just recruitment, but well-being as well, is being affected by the new way of working.
So just in relation to our area of the council, now obviously corporate information, that's a different discussion, but for our area of the council, there are big chunks of social services where it's face-to-face working. We've always worked face-to-face. Even at the very height of 2020, we had staff in, and we had staff working face-to-face in the community, and obviously in residential care and in domiciliary care. We didn't stop. I mean, that's the first thing. I do think that there is a tail of that for us in terms of the impact that it's had on staff, but probably another place, another day. So our staff have always been in, have always worked face-to-face. We do have a large proportion of our staff who are able to balance more now, because the tech is better, we're really good at doing it. We do have lots of our staff who aren't, say, residential or working in, say, for example, Flying Start or some of our other provision youth service. That clearly is, there's not an option. But we do have a lot of staff who do balance, and they do really value it. They value both elements. Being with colleagues, working face-to-face is the job, but they also, on occasion, value having the opportunity to be able to work from home, to be able to write reports, to be able to do things which take a degree of concentration, which is really difficult in a busy office, in quite often quite frantic setting that we see. And the other thing that we see that has certainly impacted on me, Councillor Mayor, is we see far more of the big national and regional meetings are happening online, and that's been a really welcome. You know, the days of having to travel to do meetings are largely gone, and I think that's really important in terms of managers' time and the time that releases for us to, all of us, to support staff who are on the front line. So there has been that change and the shift in terms of being able to free some of us up in a way that is really welcome, basically.
Right, thank you. Are you collecting any data? You mentioned some people like it,
Yeah,
because it gives them time to
yeah.
do reports, to write it. So that would be called protected time. Are they sharing with you this morning? I'm on protected time to do my report, so we can look at that protected time to make sure it's being utilised in the right way.
We don't keep the data. I mean, all staff, all calendars, people are used to working with calendars, ensuring that they liaise with their managers. We're not collecting data on that per se. I mean, I suppose what we are collecting data on is work done. Yeah, because if somebody's preparing a report and it's not done, we know. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're not per se checking those things, but we have got a regular monitoring in terms of ensuring people are available, looking at how people are managing their diaries, ensuring that all face-to-face work is appropriately covered. But if, for example, somebody was consistently taking time to write reports and then those reports didn't materialise, we would know very quickly. Yeah.
Why I'm saying it is under the one friend work.
Yeah.
Looking at that, you mentioned about not having to travel to meetings, and I understand we could be in multiple places at multiple times these days, and I think that has a detrimental, just an opinion, detrimental effect on their mental and cognitive ability, because as you said, you work in one of the most diverse and challenging areas, and whereby we would probably get 2 meetings done a day. You know, we could get 6 or 7 done, and that day can be long, with breaks infrequent, and the impact that comes on them will have an effect on their ability to stay well and function correctly. And it's that type of thing that concerns me, especially when you're looking at the retention avoid the recruitment, the retention. They're going to retain someone who is unwell.
Yeah. And I think,
You know.
I think across the whole of social services and prevention and inclusion, I think that there is a great deal of thought about that, about recognising the challenges that there are in back-to-back meetings, because that's the risk, isn't it? You know, that the days when you just walk down the corridor are a blessing, really, weren't they?
Yes.
But there are also significant advantages for a number of staff in working in a way that gives them a combined control in terms of being able to balance it. I would say that for most staff, where it's possible, not for all staff, but for most staff, a hybrid approach is helpful. So not one thing or the other. So trying to balance those things up is actually probably proving to be very useful.
And what I'm saying also
Same as today when we've got some councillors, hybrid.
Yes, is that an opinion or is, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, do I hold data on it?
We need to try and find out.
We do regular staff survey, so we've done one around working from home well and the anxiety. They're not isolated to just social services, that's across NTC. So all of our corporate sector, who we are having regular touch points, making sure that policy can sale purpose on those factors. So it's not that it's, you know, this is more well and it's going to continue that way. I think what the feedback is, the consensus is that it works for most. I think that's recommended. For those that it doesn't work for, there's the opportunity to have a civic centre that is available, our other offices are available. So it's about what works for the employees. We're encouraging employees and not just have a discussion. What works best for the service, what works best for the individual in those circumstances.
And that's what I wanted to hear, because so HR is on top of this. I mean, you were talking, HR, the services talking, instead of working in isolation, you know, this is, I'm going to bring Pat in, who's ready to put it.
Yeah, I'm heartened to hear Sally's and Luke's efforts not to use agencies to recruit staff, because it seems to me that what the agencies are doing is taking money out of the service, which really should be spent on the children and adult clients, and that's what the agencies are doing. And so I just want to thank you for your efforts in that. I think Mary.
Just in
Yeah,
terms of
Mary,
adding to that. So in terms of your earlier question about sort of the resilience and not relying on agency staff. So in terms of across our 3 residential homes, and we've got Centrica coming in, we've got 4, actually we make sure that all the managers can work across all those areas. So God forbid somebody's on leave or they're sick or whatever, actually the management structure in adult services, it can cover. Staff feel safe because it's not a new manager coming in that doesn't know how that particular home runs, actually know they're working well with that. The other unintended consequence of having the odd agency staff is actually they've left the agency and they've come to work for us. Now for us that's been a bit of a try before you buy in terms of the worker, and so it's sort of a two-way win. So we've recruited some very, very good people that came to one of our homes as an agency worker and actually loved the culture, loved what we offered, and even though we may be a few pence less an hour, actually they saw the benefit. So that's happened. In the last year, we've had 5 social workers from adult services have left Newport, and 4 have returned. So they all left to do agency or go to a different council or various things, and actually 4 of them have returned now to us. So there's obviously something, sometimes you don't know until you've tried somewhere else, isn't it? But actually that, I mean, I think that speaks volumes in terms of people understanding it's more than just the pay packet. It is that support, is that flexibility.
It's worrying in the report the effect of Brexit has had on the staff situation.
I mean, we know that to date, it's particularly in adult social care, and that's the area that it impacts. And again, you'll be aware this from the media, this is a common issue, is that in adult social care, we have had reliance for domiciliary care and for residential care in terms of people coming to us from European countries. Some of the changes that we've seen have meant we've no longer been able to do that. And we've got further changes afoot in terms of immigration, in terms of families coming with people. They will impact particularly on domiciliary care. We know that whilst within Newport we're not hugely dependent in domiciliary care, we know that some of the neighbouring very large authorities just down the M4 are. So what our concern would be is that if they lose staff, will we see a drain, basically? So it is a real worry in terms of the workforce and in terms of the exemptions within immigration and how that works. And obviously those are political decisions that we can't influence.
Okay, can I take you now back to retention and not using agency staff? And you mentioned something like the bank. Now, NHS use a bank system. You're not per se employed on the bank, but you register with the bank and you're able to employ advocatorship. Are you working with them? Because they have a system in the NHS which is really tried and tested to encourage a system of that type here.
So we're not working with the NHS on this, and I'll be honest, part of the reason that we're not working with the NHS on this is that they have very different terms and conditions to us, and their pay rates are significantly higher than ours. We wouldn't be able to run on the way that the NHS runs in terms of how they pay people. We couldn't do that. Okay? So in terms of being able to access the bank system, no, there's absolutely no way. We don't employ nursing staff as a rule. We occasionally the odd one or two.
No, I'm not asking you to access there. I'm asking you to.
They also have common terms and conditions across for pay, which we don't have. So we don't have common pay common terms and conditions or pay for any social care staff across the UK, unlike the NHS or teaching where there are. There is work going on to look at whether or not there could be some harmonisation of pay scales for staff, because I think in the same way as for teachers and NHS staff, that brings a strength to workforce. That could be something. In terms of a bank system and looking at it, the scale of the NHS system is huge, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's a huge system, and we wouldn't obviously be looking at anything like that. What we've looked at is within residential care, as I said, looking at peripatetic staff that we can move. And as Mary's described about how we ensure all of our staff can move between our homes and recapture it. We will continue to explore, is there a better way for us to do that, to use sessional, bank and so on. We may look to other models to look at that. I suspect that NHS model of bank is almost too big in terms of scale for us to even consider anything that would run in that way. We would need something much more tailored to the local authority.
Absolutely, but you wouldn't be working, I would suggest, in isolation, because you're already in collaboration with 22 other authorities who would have similar problems with regards employing agencies, retention and recruitment. And that's what I'm trying to get. Are we in that area now of discussing?
We are having those discussions. I think, again, I'll come back to not having shared pay scales is a challenge in this arena. But yes, we are absolutely in those discussions.
Right.
I suppose on a sort of microcosm of that is, so Newport City Council, we host the Home First service, which is across all the front of the hospitals in Gwent. So we manage that service. That's a 7-day-a-week service. But actually what we have done is, we don't call it a bank, but actually anybody across Gwent can sign up to do additional work at the weekends and things like that. So I don't think we call it a bank such, but actually
Similar.
but it's similar. So we've tried to do what we can in terms of making sure the work is available. So that's fine, currently working into wine or wherever full time, but actually if you want to do some additional sessions, you can do that for Newport City Council.
I think, in terms of particularly within our residential sector, we've actually got with the first port of call.
Yeah.
So with managers for obviously sort of staff that are on a casual contract with us before going into an agency.
Yeah.
So I think the next steps are exploring that further, exploring if that would be viable with potentially social work teams across the council or parent social workers. We can looking to explore those things, and that is the intention to try and reduce agency spend further in the coming years.
Okay, I don't know if that's legacy hand, David, or you want to come back in.
I don't know how to lose it.
That's okay, don't you worry, you'll never lose it. I'll just leave that there. Right, here we go. I'm going to take you in a different direction now. If anybody else wants to go first, by all means. Okay. Predominantly, the workforce is 86.9%, 48.7% female.
Yeah.
Representation and effectiveness, a male gender imbalance. I made notes because this is so important to get this right. A male social imbalance can lead to underrepresentation of men's perspectives in policy and service delivery, potentially affecting the relevance and effectiveness of the service for male clients. Now, we've done ever so well as an authority in trying to be inclusive. The one area that I see that needs to be challenged is the imbalance between male and female. And that, I mean, well, we say it leads to a perception, but it's a reality that the service is female dominated, and it is, and it can deter males from applying. What are we really doing to try and redress, even if it's talking about it, this imbalance in the service?
So firstly, it's not an input issue.
No, I understand that. We are talking about input.
We are talking about input, but I mean, Newport is not going to rock a boat in the whole of social care in terms of the attractiveness of working in social
I'm sure
care.
it is.
I mean,
don't accept that.
yeah, you don't accept.
I don't accept.
Okay,
I
so
thought we will rock it.
we probably could rock a boat, but I'm not sure we could do this single-handedly. But for me, I mean, obviously, is that yes, we are predominantly as people, no doubt about that. We do have a small group of male staff who are in important roles, and we are very clear about ensuring that the voice of those staff is heard. And we also have men who work for us who undertake particular roles which address some of the issues, for example. So, for example, we have done some really important work about working with dads, because that is an area where we do see some real challenges in terms of how we work in children's services and working with dads. We know from all the critique that there is of children's social care and family justice is that fathers are very often sidelined, not seen as part of the problem or part of the solution. So we have had some specific work where we've looked at the role of dads. We've also done some really good work which we've led for in Wales on male foster carers and on having male staff support male foster carers and really move towards ensuring that we've got our male foster carers, be they single foster carers, in gay couples or in heterosexual couples, that those male foster carers are supported in a way to offer a role model in terms of caring for our children. But we do still challenge, we do still struggle with this across the board. I don't think that we have an issue at a management level generally. I mean, what you see overall in social care is you see that men do work in social care. They tend to become managers very quickly is what happens. But we do on the ground have an issue, and we are continuing to look at it. We continue to look at how we recruit. We work with We Care Wales, and some of our staff have been representatives portraying particular types of models in social care. Because they do a great deal of work around advertising, around stereotyping or not. So we work with them to do some of that work nationally, regionally, and locally. But it is a challenge. I'm not going to get into any dispute about that. It is an issue for us.
Yes.
And absolutely agree what Sally's just been saying. But I think from an adult services perspective also, when we are doing assessments with people, it's about the voice of what they want. So if they're saying they need dom care, but actually they only want a male carer or whatever, that's what we go out to try to find. So, you know, it does depend. So the people who are receiving services is very clear. It may be that they want it delivered in a different language or whatever, but all that is part of the assessment process. So yes, there is more we need to do, and actually that's about working with all our domiciliary care providers. 27 we work with in Newport, and actually it's about saying to them, this is the care package we need. We need male carers or 2 male carers or mixed or whatever, and then it will be for those services to find that.
And can they find it?
Well,
What's the experience?
today we haven't had major issues, only because majority of people want a female carer, and whether that's because of personal care, and it's slightly different from children's services and other areas of work, but and also historically social care has not been very well paid, and it's been women that have done that. So when I think in terms of the range of services, I think Sally's right, men do come into social care and social work, but actually they seem to move through the ranks very quickly.
Well, what are we doing to encourage more male into? What are we doing?
Yeah, we're doing the stuff, we're doing stuff
Yeah,
nationally, and
So
then
in terms of Newport, in terms of what we're doing, people plan that I referenced that will be publishing next week. We'll have a strand in there of representation transformation. So that strand isn't targeted specifically at attracting more male employees. What is targeted at is making sure our workforce is representative of the population in Newport. So there'll be activities as part of that plan spanning over the next 5 years to make sure that our workforce is as representative as possible, and that the people of Newport feel that we are an employer of choice, that there is places to work for us in those posts, and they are encouraged to apply for us. So even though that's not directed at male residents of Newport, it is across the whole, showing to the city really that we are an inclusive employer and we want a diverse workforce that can work for us. So there will be activities in there making sure that we are focusing ourselves as much as possible.
And they've been ever so quiet, and I go to them and go in there.
I think Sally's got it right, Chair. I think I think it's historically the way we've attracted people into social care. And if you go back literally to the beginning of social care, it's been through residential, which has been predominantly a female career. And I think that there's definitely a message there. There's definitely something to do about getting out into careers. What else? Talking to people about schools. Because I think that it has changed, and I think and I think we talk about social work as almost a specific singular occupation, and what we've got really is dozens and dozens of careers within social work. We've got mental health, we've got drug and alcohol, we've got residential dom care, we've got everything. It's all there, and it's really, certainly as a male who's been a social worker for near on 30 years, I think it's an incredibly rewarding career as well. And I think we've got to get that message over much stronger, really, because it's also a career I think that's been battered quite heavily, in the sense that we have gone through a very difficult period with COVID, but also if anything goes wrong in social work, it's very easy to target social workers in the media and press individually, and I think we've got to really move away from that and make and show people the attractive side of social work. I think because I think it is. I'm sure we've got lots of people approaching the tail end, and self included, and I think when you look at your career as an entirety and as a whole, I think most social workers would say it's been much more rewarding than difficult.
I think you make a valid point. Social worker, I suppose, is like the umbrella. There's many spokes like the umbrella and other parts that move. Yeah, that keep that umbrella. But it's the umbrella that get mentioned all the time.
And when people leave, when we say that people are transferring, they're not always transferring away from the profession. They're moving within that circle of social work as well. So myself, I've had 3 or 4 or 5 different jobs in social work, but they've all been social work. And I think that's the message to get over. I think there's a role for almost anybody in social work if they enjoy working with people and they enjoy that sort of face-to-face contact.
Apparent.
I'm pleased to hear, Chair, what Sally was saying about the advertising of the role of social workers. And can I ask where and which establishments that takes place in?
Okay.
Place in schools, and is there an apprenticeship scheme, or is it free qualification.
So We Care Wales is a national piece of work done under the umbrella of Social Care Wales, which is about recruitment across the whole of social care. So as Councillor Hughes has described, it's about everything within social care, from play work, youth work, family support work, youth justice work, drug and alcohol work, domiciliary care work, all the way through. We Care Wales is looking at positive recruitment campaigns. We advertise our posts on We Care Wales. We use that as our main vehicle, really, to get posts out, because most of the people within the profession of whatever sort would look to there. And you may have seen some advertising campaigns on television. A lot of those have been funded by Welsh Government and then run by We Care Wales. And they include on their website some great case studies by staff, including some of our staff, who submitted stories about exactly what Jason described, how good it is to work in social care in different sorts of roles. So that's We Care Wales. We work closely with the youth colleges in relation to social work training, and then we also work closely with the training providers in relation to residential care and domiciliary care provision. And then to some extent, we work with those providers who provide training for youth work and play work. So there's a whole sort of range of professions within that. Social work recruitment is a challenge at the moment. We know that the universities, even 5 years ago, there were certain courses you couldn't get a place on for love and money. That has changed quite significantly over the past 5 years. So the numbers of people wishing to train as social workers has diminished. And there are complex national reasons for that, which we don't need to repeat here. There has been some real push to try to remedy that. One of the ways that that's been done nationally is to reintroduce the bursary. The bursary ended again. You could still, for some health professions, you could have a bursary for training. You couldn't in social work. That was reintroduced, and that has been helpful. And some of the advertising work has done that. Locally, what we've done is we've really tried to focus on supporting staff to go through the stages. So in terms of social workers, you maybe come to us as a social work assistant, residential work or family support work, and we would then support you to do the stages to get to the point where you could do the university qualification in social work. We used to offer 2 traineeships, but we're able to offer more spaces if we use the OU route and take more people through, basically. And we then offer them the support to undertake the training while they work for us, and then they come back and work for us. And that's cautiously, I would say that that's proving to be really a good option, and people want to do that and they want to go down that route. So in terms of traineeships, that's one of them.
Yeah, it is a national issue in terms of social workers. So the tactic you take there, is that overall, and it solves the problem. We don't have it in a way. It's not part of the problem. We don't have a challenge with social work assistants. When we post out, sometimes have in excess of 20 applications for certain posts, depending on the team. So by growing our own, it doesn't solve the problem. We did in 3 years. We'll have a qualified social worker that will hopefully stay with us because we supported them, and they want to continue their role in Newport.
Generally, of those that we've seen going through that route, they do stay. So that is encouraging, that they see that it's a place they want to work. We similarly support our residential staff to undergo training, and there's certain training they have to do, but we continue to support them to do training. And similarly, we support family support staff, youth service, play service to do training as well. We are actively across Gwent looking at how we work with FE, so how we work with further education to work with younger people to look at how you can exactly, as Jason said, how do you make social care attractive to people in terms of seeing it as a career which has got lots of parts to it and which is constantly, I was going to say entertaining, but that's probably not the best word, but it's constantly a satisfying area in which to work. So we do work there. And we also, our staff work closely with the universities in terms of training to offer up sessions with them, basically. So a number of things ongoing in terms of how we work with as colleagues, colleges and so on. So yeah, there is a sort of stream. We could do this full time and we still wouldn't scratch it really, but we really are trying to ensure that we're opening as many doors as possible to encourage people to come into social care, and then as Luke describes, see them through.
Before I bring the cabinet member in, can you tell me what you do with regards to succession planning?
So,
within the
yeah,
service?
okay. So that's a really interesting question. Colleagues will be aware there are some succession issues that are on their way within social services. I would say I've been really encouraged with the number of people who've applied for the Head of Adult Services post, which is currently, yeah, it was a good number anyway. So I think we were really pleased with the interest that was there in the post and the number of people who within those applications will make the shortlist is impressive. Basically, really, really pleasing. I think that's something to do with reputation, so that's really good. In terms of succession planning, yes, we do. We offer a number of programs in terms of team manager development and middle management development. Most of those we do with external organisations, and that also gives staff, for example, a chance to meet with managers in other organisations, in other local authorities, and in other similar sort of NHS. And you quite often see people who say, "Oh, I met you on the TMDP," and then they form really good working relationships with people. So we do offer those training programs to take people through. The social workers, we have a whole range of issues post-qualification that they have to do, that they have to go through post-qualification. We support all of those and we support staff to undertake those programs. And I suppose that in a way, our social work assistant to social work is succession planning because it's about going through the system. I think as a rule, we have been pretty good at being able to recruit at team manager and service manager level. We've not struggled in those areas. And that's really encouraging because that does demonstrate that we're able to take people through, but also attract on occasion when appropriate new people in. So yeah, quite a lot of work. We try really hard to give people really good opportunities, shadowing, going out with people, coming to things, etc., trying to give people those opportunities wherever possible.
If I could go back to that very quickly, before we get to the social work group, actually in my world, there's a lot of people who may have play or qualification. We actively support and encourage people to engage with the council to access social work training course. So that we've got a number of staff in my world who are now actively engaged in social work training to progress that development. So we are very engaged, even though my world is predominantly not social work, but actually for a number of staff, they are interested in that progression. So we make sure that those opportunities are available to them in my world as they are to adults and children.
Okay, that's better. Okay.
Yeah, what I wanted to add to it was it's a vocation. It's not a job. It's something you want to do. You want to be there to help people. As Sally alluded to, plus I've got a wonderful habit of focusing on one bad thing. Completely ignoring the 99% of all the good things that go on out there and the way the team step in, look after the children. Well, cradle to grave, basically. I got 2 flying stars in the world. I've never seen that building so happy as when flying star begins. And it's just organised noise. It's lovely. And if ever you're down, hop in, because you won't be down for long. I can guarantee that. It's lovely. I'm also on the board of the Youth Justice Service. For me, the team are fully aware. I don't believe in criminalising children because at 15, let's be fair, Bill, we were all stupid at 15 and we make mistakes.
Some of us still make them.
Exactly. Have somebody's life ruined when they become an adult because of something silly they did as a child is cruel beyond it. So for me, and this is why I'm forever praising our staff, our head of service, because this team absolutely goes above and beyond every single day.
I'm glad you speak in this manner because your passion goes before you, even though it's not. Yes, it is about the service, and it is about recruitment and retention, and that passion to have that goes into why people stay, because people will stay with passionate people. Yes.
Just follows on from what Pat and Deb were saying, really, that I think when you're going through school, you only hear the bad things in the press and the news, and it might not seem like such an appealing career when someone else will come in and told you actually all the nice satisfying stories and the successes and yeah, the uplifting elements of it. So, you know, I think that is a huge, you know, thing that we could be doing, you know, at sixth form level when they're thinking about what do I want to do next, what career might I choose. You know, I think that's a really key time to get kids interested, you know, and it might help, you know, if you get a Newport child, they might stay in Newport then as well, you know, so.
Well, I'm sure they have motivational speakers in sixth forms. We put them into our schools. So that Martin school will have an inspirational speaker go in there. So that's La Martin Primary School. And it is, I'd like to see this rolled over. So it's an education thing, but collectively it could be rolled out as a part of explaining why social work is more than just social work. It's just not about the social worker. I mean, and that could go around the schools to start to explain what social work is all about. And maybe that could be a part of the recommendation that the cabinet members could take away, because you need to get in there young and start making them think that social work is so valued and it's an important career and a vocation.
Once again, we also have children.
Absolutely, absolutely right.
You know, thank you, Chair. Just 2 points. I think the nature of specialisation has helped as well, because there's different things like the international teams and things like that there has allowed staff members to actually go into positions that they wish to you know, facilitate in. And I think that there's been a lot of support in those roles, and that, you know, when they go out for basic applications and things like that, that, you know, we have a swathe of applications coming in, which is always really, really good, you know, within those specialisations. And I think, you know, with another hat on, you know, with another organisation I'm part of with young people that obviously partake in the care side of things as well, and health side, there's a lot of intergenerational work these days. It's not just within organisations, but in schools. It's about breaking down barriers, you know, and understanding people better. So I think there's more understanding of having that kind of thing of how do we care better for others, and how do we understand people better. And I think it's breaking down those barriers, which we'll start to see hopefully come through, you know, coming through these barriers and actually coming into the care work moving forward. So I think with those kind of organisations, schooling and things like that there, we may see that better understanding as a whole society in order to basically respect care work, but also see more people hopefully go into the profession of care as well.
Okay, thank you for that. If there isn't any more questions, we start thinking about recommendations. And, yes,
maybe one recommendation could be that we encourage social service department to actually work into schools, because role models are important for young people, and if children in school can see a young both male and female social workers, then that will encourage them, because those are role models to encourage the youngsters in schools to consider work in social care.
and maybe not just social workers, those who work in the social work field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we get caught into the same thing. We're playing the social work. Yeah, but those who work in the field, and there's more of them than there is of them, I guess.
Yes.
Is she? Councillor Cladley, Jan.
Thank you, Chair. Hang on, I'm still having problems with my laptop. I can't get the camera on for some reason. But I was going to mention, you mentioned going into schools, but we've also got a university on a square, and they do a social work course there, plus also the youth work course. It would be good to to go into the university and have some input there.
We Councillor Kembley, we are linked with the university for the courses that they do linked to social care, so we have got those links.
Thank you, Sally. Sorry, I'm having a nightmare with my computer this morning.
That's okay, don't worry. Thank you for your question. Is there anything else that you want to bring out? Obviously, for me, it's a continuation of a collaboration with the 22 authorities regarding the creation of. We have to find another word. If I say a bank.
I think relief pool is a good way to put it.
A relief pool.
Yeah, relief pool
Yeah.
will do it. And I think that,
Okay,
and I
you've got
think,
what you want.
thank you very much. And I think it's not just nationally, it's regionally.
Yeah.
Regionally for residential staff.
Well, we're here in Newport, we work in Wales, there's 22 of us. I'm sure they're experiencing the same. And 22 brains and 22 stacks of money to go towards this will help.
Yeah, it's just my request of elected members, whenever you see things like social care week and stuff like that, social week, anything like that there, please promote it in your communities, because things like that there's community representatives like we all are, been output to say it's a positive for role to go in, and something that we can put forward in our communities and ask questions, put people forward to the right contacts, and hopefully, make the ability and their journey into the career a lot smoother if possible.
Thank you. But we are making recommendations to you guys. But I do take it, and thanks for reminding us. I actually one of those sad people who always do promote all those things on social media because it's important.
Do we want the recommendation about the additional benchmarking data in the future to the extent
think
it's
so.
available? Yeah.
Obviously, to work to get a more balanced workforce. Always keep that at the top of your mind that imbalances don't work. Don't get the best service from an imbalance. Yes, so that we keep always having that there. I know the reasons why they exist. I just don't have the answers yet.
I don't think we're ever going to get what we don't really want to 50-50.
No, but we get those someday, I guess.
But I gather from what you said earlier, Sally, that maybe some clients don't necessarily want a male carer.
Yeah, but it's all about the imbalances about policy making, informative decisions.
You also can't force
Male.
men to apply for the jobs, can you?
No, you can't force that, but you have to start somewhere to make it more attractive and to take away the idea that it is a female profession, that it's not. We still have these legacy routines hanging over, and we're going to do everything we can to make it, to do away with that outdated model of thinking. Is there anything else that any members on at home like?
Would be helpful, Chair, if I just go through what I've got so we can make sure it's all definitely picked up.
Yeah, by all means.
So we've got the recommendations that benchmarking data be considered to drive improvement, the continuation of work to encourage a more balanced workforce, recommending engagement with schools to encourage social work fields as a career, and the continuation of work with authorities for a relief pool of workers.
Yeah.
And then there's a request for the current number of vacancies.
With the benchmarking, it's considered but also provided to committee.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Just to be really clear with that, on what level are we looking at having a more annual consideration of this report? Are we looking to include it in end of year reports? Do you want to?
I think we need some. I'd like to see us back here in 12 months, looking at this again and seeing have we made any progress? Have we gone backwards? Or where are we in the field? And it's helpful to have HR here I really think having that input has helped. Having all the cabinet members here has helped. And the officers here themselves and you guys. Those have been great. You know,
Can I
but
just suggest that in terms of the recommendation, in terms of the encouragement for social work, actually, I think it needs to be social care / work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then it makes it as broad as possible.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so are we happy with those recommendations?
And I've added the recommendation for the 1 year review.
Yes. Okay, so we're all in favour of that. There's no objections to that. Thank you all for your input today. I hope you found it useful. You know? So you know the right things to do. Thank you. And so I think we can let them go now, can't we?
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Thank you, guys. Give you a second. That's the same. What do you want? Okay.
No, let me tell you, I've been through my section sheet.
Okay, we're going to hand over now to Sam. Right, Sam, on page 49 we are.
The usual. We look at the action sheet, there are a few topics and then actually we're carrying on into the next year now. We've had a lot of responses from education and with the latest with the FPF data, the fixed antidote data.
Yes.
That's what we've got to. I have comments for that or anything to see we read it in content. As I'm sure you're all aware, this is our final meeting of this municipal year, and the next date of the next meeting date is the 11th of June, so just after they're making an AGM. We've got a couple of information reports come through in the time between our meetings, but there's been no comments from the committee or any questions. So again, I'm going to assume you're content with what you've read. And that's all from me, Chish. That's where we are currently.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And as I said, this is the last one of this term. And we'll see what happens next term. So thank you and goodbye.
Thanks. Thank you.